Yes, welcome one, welcome all, welcome to another exciting episode of the General Gaming Show. I am Bridger. I'll be your general for this evening.
You say that.
Or I'll be Batman. That's right. I have a mug that has a cape because Batman's awesome. Why not? I don't. That's the correct answer to that question, really. So we are talking about game genres today because there are a lot of different ways to classify games, and how we do that sort of says something about the games that we're talking about. And we do it slightly differently than how movies and TV do. So why don't we talk about that? But before we go there, let me introduce everybody else here. Again, you're watching the General Gaming Show. I am Bridger. I'll be your host. And with me, I have Brett and Freelancer. Hello, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
How you doing?
Not bad. So what has been going on with you guys? What have you been playing recently?
I have been actually dancing around Dota 2, which is interesting because I was a big proponent of League over Dota. Decided to get rid of the ego and try it out, and I'm actually quite enjoying myself. So, been having a good time there, and then also been getting into all sorts of nostalgia with various RPGs, old MMOs and stuff, such as more recently Warhammer. Tried out Terra. Tried out EverQuest 2 a little bit, and tried to find a home, so to speak. A lot of our community is in an interlude where we're looking for something to do. So
there's only so much League you can play.
Right, yeah. I mean, we've been playing so much League. We have like 40, 50 people that play League, but you can only do that so often. So a bunch of people mentioned Dota 2, like you're showing here. And it's, I mean, we all know what Dota 2 is. We've talked about it before. It's just a matter of somebody that's played so much League trying to get into Dota. There's a lot of mechanics that are fundamentally different. So it's not that it's not fun. It's just takes some getting used to.
Yeah, it's actually a lot that are subtly different too, where you're expecting one thing to happen. Like, I kept going, why is the tower attacking me? What's going on? And they're like, the towers will defend themselves. If you attack them, they'll attack you unless they're being attacked by creeps. And I'm like, that's completely alien. Every time I go to attack a tower, it's shooting at me, and I can't understand. So I did like they've very much improved the tutorial, though. They have this whole set of quests that they slowly introduce you to the Dota mechanics, and I thought it was very impressive, having never been through it before. So, you know, good on them. It seemed like it would be very useful for somebody who's coming to a Dota MOBA game fresh. What about you, Rob? What have you been playing?
I did a lot of older games on a Sega emulator recently, and other than that, I've been trying out Cobalt again because I haven't played in a couple of alpha releases.
I think you mentioned that at one point on a previous show. It looks like a 2D platformer here that you said it has like bullet time, right?
Yeah, so anytime something dangerous gets near you, the world slows down and gives you time to dodge things and shoot at it. And instead of giving you an aiming mechanic, you have a roll. And while you're rolling, if you want to shoot something above you, you kind of roll and wait till your gun's pointed up and then fire.
That's the most, controllable way to aim at something above you.
Well, it's actually pretty easy to do, and especially when you're in bullet time and you're spinning very slowly, you can hit things pretty accurately when you really need to do it.
Okay, fair enough.
Or in this particular video, failing to hit it accurately.
I'm going to state that I'm very bad at Cobalt. I haven't played in a very long time. I'm about to explode again right there. So, but in my defense, this is challenge mode, and I just figured out that I had to jump up there and shoot that thing, so there's one less rocket coming at me.
Okay, there you go.
So point of challenge mode is the single player isn't done yet because it still is in alpha. But they've been releasing more and more challenges. Originally, it was only survival mode, so it was nice to see they've added more stuff to the game. And see there, I did a backflip, and in the middle of the backflip, I shot something.
I saw that. It looked like you hit two things at the same time, almost.
Yeah, and the real place where this game comes out and succeeds in a big way for me is that it gives you a lot of cool moments with the bullet time. Like, you kind of feel that time dilation in moments of, intense concentration anyway, and making it a mechanic in the game has a really cool feel to it. And pulling off big moves while the game is slowing down for you has an equally really cool feel to it.
Does it give you more time to facepalm when you know there's nothing you can do?
Yes, it does. There are many times where a missile is coming at me, and it just gives me that extra half second to go like, well, it's time to make peace with any gods I believe in. I guess.
Oh, there you go.
Case,
perfect. It does look like it would be pretty fun, almost like in a Super Meat Boy kind of way.
Yeah, and I really can't wait to see what they do with the. See there. It gave me enough time to see that I shouldn't jump, and then I jumped into a grenade.
There it is. Oh man.
But
okay.
It's being developed by, or was originally developed by one of the guys who became part of the main development team for Minecraft. So development's been a little bit slow for that reason, but it's now being made in association with Mojang. There's some talented people behind it. The art looks really neat. It has a really good aesthetic going for it. It has a really nice game feel to it. And if you're looking for a kind of classic-y feeling platformy shooter, but that has a lot of new stuff to it, I really highly recommend this game.
Excellent. All right. Well, keep an eye on that. Let us know when it goes into beta or comes out more readily, and we'll definitely check it out. So this past weekend, I went to play a board game called Successors, which is an incredibly fun game. It's one of the its highlight for me is that it takes a war game. Almost all war games that were well designed that I've come across were two-player war games. It's very easy to make a two-player war game, especially because most conflicts are two-sided. But this one did a fantastic job of creating a four-player war game that didn't get completely unbalanced. Like, okay, everybody gang up on Frank, and then everybody gang up on Bob, and now it's just you and me, Todd. So instead, the focus of this game is that Alexander the Great has just died, and each player represents a pair of generals of Alexander's close council, his main generals, that all want to rule the world. They all want to be Alexander's successor. And you can become the successor in multiple ways. And this is my personal favorite thing that I can find in a board game or even a regular game. Anything that gives you multiple ways to win, multiple paths to victory. I don't know why, but that pushes my buttons. So if you're listening out there and you're designing a game and you want my attention, that's how you do it. So you can try to become the most legitimate heir of Alexander. If everybody in the important, world knows that you are the legitimate heir because you have collected and married his, his mother or his daughters, or you've collected his sons, and you are seen as the most legitimate person, then you can become instant victory. Or you can just conquer everything, because once you've conquered enough, you can be seen as, yep, he's clearly as good as Alexander was. So there's a lot of sort of back and forth, and the kind of things that you can have happen in this game are just fantastic, especially because Alexander's body starts in Babylon and needs to get back to Macedonia, and if you can do that, and you're the one to bury it, you get a huge legitimacy bonus. Everybody sees you as very legitimate, because the former king the new king always buried the former king. But this results in the person who starts with Alexander's body in Babylon having to fight his way through everybody in his way. And in our game, that resulted in one person making it almost all the way to Macedonia before I grabbed the body out from under him, breaking our truce, and then somebody else backstabbing me and burying the body for the victory. So I thought it was a lot of fun. Highly recommended if you are interested in slogging through the rules, because it is a pretty heavy war game. So that's what I've been doing. And I probably just put most of the audience to sleep. They went, history. Oh well. So what's in the news this week? We got a very interesting Humble Bundle. A maybe not so humble bundle. Free was telling everybody in Team Legacy about that. What do we got here this week, Free?
Well, I mean, it's actually really, really cool. For PC gamers, this is a major win. It's
Well,
for
PC gamers who may not have spent money on these items already.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could be bitter, but I mean, the point is for anybody that doesn't own some of these games, especially like Dead Space 3 and Battlefield 3, it's a good deal. So this Humble Bundle, if you're not aware of the website, every week they put out different things, and it's not just games. There's books and all sorts of stuff, and the idea is you donate a certain amount of money to charity, or to whatever particular thing they're trying to push at that time, and you get this package deal. So every so often, like every other week or so, they do PC games, and it's usually indie games and stuff. Nothing too big. A lot of people follow it because they want to add Steam titles to their Steam account, and they tend to put a lot of those indie type Steam games on there. And you pay anywhere from like $2 to $5. Sometimes it goes up to $10. Well, this particular bundle has arguably nothing but, instead of indie games, has arguably nothing but AAA games on here, such as Dead Space 3, Crysis 2, Mirror's Edge, Battlefield 3. I don't know about Sims 3, how I would word that, but it's on there too, plus the expansion. So all of these games combined, if you had bought them when they came out, obviously we know hundreds of dollars, and we're all a little bitter about that. But right now they're all about $5. And the best part about it is that this $5 doesn't go to EA, because these are on Origin. Just throwing it out there. You activate the keys on Origin and you can download the game. But these games are actually the money that you pay towards it goes to a charity. So really, really cool. If you've never played any of these titles and you always wanted to, I recommend Dead Space 3. I recommend Mirror's Edge if you've never played it. Battlefield 3 if you like shooters. Any one of these is worth $5. A few, especially like Battlefield 3, for example. So yeah, just throwing it out there for awareness, so to speak. And then speaking of bundles, Bridger, I found a game music bundle for $1. That is also really cool. It has about 5 different soundtracks, the full soundtracks for Fez. If you ever played that game, we talked about it a few episodes ago.
Yep.
Faster Than Light, which has an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah.
Monaco soundtrack.
Monaco's good too.
All of this for $1, which is really, really cool.
Oh,
So
the World of Goo soundtrack is fantastic.
Yes, so if you're a streamer or if you just enjoy chilling and doing work, listening to these kind of soundtracks, $1, I mean, that's amazing. So right there, throwing that out there for awareness for everybody as well.
And it looks like you have 8 hours left. So by the time this gets to anybody tomorrow,
well, consider it's a special treat for those
for the
watching
people
live.
that were watching. Exactly. Don't forget,
but
7 p.m. every Sunday.
But $1 for all these soundtracks. It's really cool. And then I guess I'll let you say the rest of it there. Just a few other little quick announcements.
Yeah, it looks like the Xbox is detracting from one of their more unpopular announcements. The Kinect is no longer a required piece to make the Xbox One function. They backed off on that. It looks like and I was surprised. I was surprised when they backed off on their original thing, and now they're backing off even more. I guess they were getting still more pressure. On this particular point.
And how mad do you think the NSA was about that?
Wow. He went there. He went there.
Not to go into Conspiracyville for too long, but I didn't like the fact that their big evil camera wasn't up for debate before.
That's one way to put it.
So, Tibber, do you think this is going to affect the Xbox sales? Do you think people are going to come to the light now, or what?
I think that I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Too little, too late, maybe.
Well, it used to be that exclusive titles sold the console. What exclusives you had really drove people to what console they were going to buy. I remember buying a PlayStation 2 because I knew Final Fantasy was going to be on it, and not an Xbox because I didn't know anything that was going to be on the Xbox. And then Halo came out, and I was like, maybe I missed the boat a little bit.
Yeah.
But then last generation, I've heard it argued that access to services was the really big thing. So the consoles that were the most popular had really good social integration and ability to give you like Netflix and other things that you sign up for that you want on your big TV. And
yeah, All right, so
Long story short, I have no idea what's going to be the determining factor in the next console generation, or if people will still care that much.
Microsoft seems to still think it's services because they were pushing the whole TV thing really hard. Like, look at all the cool things besides games that you can do that we can sell you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be very difficult to tell. But at this point, I think Sony has a pretty solid lead on the Xbox One. But no way to tell until the actual numbers come out, I'm sure. So
I think the one thing they've all decided is the best way to make a new console is to make a PC. Because we now no longer have weird processors.
You're just bringing the burn this podcast. So, what about that Grand Theft Auto Online, Bridger? What do you think about that?
That's a good question. I just read the announcement. I don't think we have too many details. They've said, quote, "It is a dynamic and persistent online world for 16 players that begins by sharing gameplay features, geography, and mechanics with Grand Theft Auto 5, but will continue to expand and evolve after its launch with new content created by Rockstar Games and the Grand Theft Auto community," unquote. So that's kind of interesting. They're planning to put mod support in there, or maybe just support for items like TF2 has.
Yeah, the way I see this is if you remember, I think it was GTA 3 or 4, there was already an online mod, where you could play with other players. This is just making it official, the way I see it.
Yeah.
It's trying to give official support and add the functionality on top of that, because the online GTA that you can play now is basically just a server that loads the map, and then players can all run around and do things. There's no, interactivity there. There's no housing or anything like that. So this is promising to add housing and a mild economy. And so if you want to be I don't know what they'll call them, guilds or whatever. If you want to be a guild that controls the drug trade, you can do that in this GTA Online. So I think we'll there seems to be a lot of hype about it, so we'll definitely be seeing more. I mean, we got PAX and Gamescom, that still need to finish up this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try to promote that. And then, Tibrit, what do you think about the Amnesia, the new one?
I'm excited for it. I really enjoyed the first Amnesia. Because it was, I don't know, it was so different from a lot of, especially first-person games that I've played, and it's one of those things that it refreshes you in a way.
Oh man, it refreshes.
You think,
that's the word you choose to use for Amnesia.
Because I've been playing a lot of the same types of things over and over again, and it's like every once in a while you see a movie or you read a book or you play a game, and it makes you go, I thought I had seen everything, but the world can still surprise me.
I see.
And it was refreshing for that reason. Not while I was playing it. It was I was doing nothing but sweating and shaking while I was playing it. But once I had time to sit back and reflect and get over the night terrors, that's when it set in that.
My wife still hasn't beat it. She's had the problem that it's not on the Steam cloud, and she doesn't remember to save her save games when she reformats Windows, and she had her hard drive crash again recently. She was so happy because she had not finished Amnesia or King's Bounty. She had gotten back into playing both of them, and the hard drive failed, and then she reformatted before I even got home and was like, "Oh no, my save games! No!" And I thought, Steam Cloud, you come so dependent on it, right? It's in all the new games, but in one of these indie titles like Amnesia, oh no, my save games. That's a big pain. All right. Anyway, enough about the trials of Bridger's wife. What do we got coming up the next couple of weeks? I've been playing some Kingdoms of Amalur, and I'll give you some footage of that while we're talking about the main topic here tonight. I'm probably going to be playing some more of it this Wednesday. I want to be getting a little further in that. There's a lot of cool things to unlock. So I'm going to work on that. And then we've got the Puzzle Strike Tournament. Team Legacy is sponsoring a Puzzle Strike Tournament coming up at the end of the month on Saturday the 31st. Don't forget to check that out. It's going to be really fun. Brett and I are going to be casting it. Even if you have no idea what's going on in that game, we're going to make sure that it's easy for you to figure out what's going on. You're going to learn a lot about strategy. It's a free-to-play online game with some limitations, just like League. You can't play every character, etc., but there's a rotating free character. So check it out. FantasyStrike.com is where you can play the game, and don't forget to tune in 2 o'clock on that Saturday the 31st. And of course, September 3rd, Rome 2 is coming out. Great and I are getting together to do something fun with that, some kind of co-op campaign or something. I don't know exactly what's going on, if that's going to be on launch day or not, but launch day, something is happening. So definitely check us out on September 3rd. You can go to twitch.tv/team Legacy or /Bridger15 if you want to find it.
I think everybody in the community is going to be playing Rome 2 when that comes out. So
you could probably do the Octabox if you went to like the Team Legacy team page.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there will be so many streams going. It'll be crazy because a lot of our inspiration and the ways we structure things were based off of the Roman Empire. So there's a lot of relations there that we quite enjoy. So I think there'll be a lot of fun. We should all do like a multiplayer match, Bridger. Me versus you.
Oh no! I get the Carthaginians with elephants. I call them.
That's fine. I'll take whoever has the strongest archers, because we all know in Total War games, archers are OP. So yeah, we'll leave it at that.
I'll take companion cavalry. I'll take Greek cavalry. You take the archers. We'll see who wins. All right.
Deal.
So, how do you define a genre? And when this was first brought up, and I don't remember if it was when I was reading an article somewhere or if it was an extra credits episode where somebody pointed out, our genres are really just lists of mechanics. When you talk about a genre of movie or TV and you say an action movie or a horror movie or a romantic comedy, those aren't describing the cinematic. It's not called a close-in, heavy dark filter movie, right? Even though those may be the features of the movie, we don't call the movie by the mechanics of how it's made. We talk about those movies by how they actually sort of make us feel, or the experience we're going to get when we go into them. But when we talk about games, we talk about first-person shooters. We talk about massively multiplayer online RPGs. We talk about sandbox games. So my first question to you guys is, why do you think that is? Why do we sort of describe things much more differently when we talk about games?
I think it's because what you have the most direct contact with. In a movie, the emotional ride is your first point of contact. In a game, the way that you interact with it is your first point of contact.
Okay.
Like, I do think there's one caveat to the argument, which is horror games.
Survival horror, yes.
Exactly. Because while it's the survival part's kind of a mechanic, the horror part is the... And again, I think it's because the horror that you're experiencing is still the point and the first point of contact for those games.
All right. So, what do you think, Free? Is that the main reason games are, or was it like, okay, it's a new industry and people just thought differently?
I don't think it's too different from what we experience in real life or day to day. It's they're not named specifically because of what they are. They're named more so of the stereotype or the genre of personality that would play that type of game. I think they're named in that specific. So if you say something is a first-person shooter, well, let's say I'm somebody that knows nothing about PC games, but I have an idea of the stereotypes. Everybody grows up with an idea of the kind of high school kid that plays a shooter or the kind of geek that plays a role-playing game. I immediately place myself in that ideology, where if I hear this particular term, and that's why you hear various changes and twists of the terms, I believe, because they're trying to reach out to more people. Like, an example, role-playing game. Okay, well, when you hear role-playing game, or if you heard it 10 years ago, uh, without a doubt, no matter who you were, whether you were in the in crowd or out, you thought tabletop, nerdy geek group, that kind of goes off on the weekends and plays board games, and then they play Dungeons and Dragons. That's what you think. So as you move along with that, and you have a game like World of Warcraft, they try really hard not to say role-playing game. They try to rename it, and then as you see other MMOs come out, they try to rename it slightly. And I think they do that not to define what kind of game it is necessarily, but to reach out to a different mindset to say that even if I didn't want to be a part of that geek crowd, since I'm hearing the name MMORPG instead of just MMO or what have you, I'll be more inclined to look into it. I think it really has to do with the stereotypes behind the genres, is why they change it so often, why there's so many names.
And there's a couple of interesting ones too, like a Dota game is sort of a genre in and of itself. Of course, the Riot guys at League of Legends, or the League of Legends guys at Riot, would have us believe that these are MOBAs, because they don't want the genre of their game named after a competitor.
Right. And again, it's about stereotypes. Maybe stereotypes is the wrong word, but it's about the perception of that title. What is that title associated with? Well, when you hear the launch of MMOs, sure, some people, older folks like me and you, may think EverQuest or, etc. But most people are going to think when they hear MMO, if you're not part of that scene, you're going to think World of Warcraft. Well, if you're somebody outside that's saying, well, World of Warcraft is frequently outside the community referred to as a really bad game, stay away from it, don't go anywhere near it. So when a new MMO launches, they will try any particular rewording to rename their genre to something else. The very notion of free-to-play, for example, which you could argue is its own subgenre of MMOs. The games associated with free-to-play, people try to get away with that. You think Korean MMOs, for example, or you think any number of other genres. So if another game decides to launch that is any sort of vague definition of free-to-play, they're going to actually try to rename their payment system to something else. Not because they want to redefine the genre, but because they don't want those individuals that hate or recognize the term free-to-play to associate their game with that.
Right. It definitely, each of the different types, each genre that we would talk about, from roguelike to first-person shooter to RTS, there's a sort of general consensus that when people talk about X, then it comes with a set of things that all of these things represent. That's what categorization is. You're putting things that are like each other together. But there are many different types of like real-time strategy games, for example. Age of Empires has a very different set of mechanics from Command and Conquer. In my head, when I was, growing up and I was playing real-time strategy games back in the day, I almost considered those two different subgenres, because one was all about workers when it comes to the economy, and the other one was all about harvesting, Tiberium instead. It's like, okay, you can say RTS, and some people will think StarCraft, and other people will think, Hearts of Iron 3, because, okay, technically that's an RTS, isn't it? But it's very, very different. So a lot of the ways that we define games will usually wind up being like, oh, it's like game Y or game X. So
it's not a bad thing, though.
No, not necessarily.
By the same measure, not all romance-heavy books or movies or anything else, by having a category, by definition, you're almost choosing a very broad definition to have an easy way of classifying things, and you can, delve down into that taxonomy and keep making subdivisions and subdivisions and subdivisions, but eventually all humans are apes, if you know what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
So you can subdivide RTSs all you want, but the point of having a classification is so that we can, even if it's not terribly accurate, group things together.
And here's the dirty little secret, by the way. If you read books on game design, or you talk to, professors that teach game design, damn near the first chapter of every book is trying to define a game. And almost every book that I've read basically says, we can't really define game because you can't make a definition for game that doesn't leave some things out that you want, or it includes things that you don't want. And they always say, for our purposes, we're going to use this as our definition of game and hope that it covers all the bases. It's defining things is a very nebulous process. So we're already in trouble when we can't even define what game means, and now we're trying to subdivide it into other chapters. But we definitely do have sort of 2 or 3 main ways that we describe games. One is the sort of mechanical. It's like first-person shooter. But I think that's maybe because most first-person shooters are very similar. They all revolve around that core mechanic of being in first person and shooting things. Like, you wouldn't call Portal a first-person shooter, right? You'd call it maybe a first-person puzzler, but it's definitely not a first-person shooter. But I think the name of the genre usually has something to do with the main thing that you first think about, that it evokes when you think about that game. Horror games, the first thing you can think about is that they evoke horror. And first-person shooters is, oh, well, this is a game where you're in the first person, and the vast majority of those wind up with you shooting things. So I think that might be why some games are labeled after mechanics and some labeled after experiences. It's just the first thing that comes to mind when you think of them. And so it was, the most widely adopted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think when I hear a lot of people describe things, it seems like the genres almost form like interconnectable building blocks of some kind, where you can mix and match to give people a more detailed version of what you're talking about. So it's a first-person shooter with RPG elements, for instance, is fairly popular, or a first-person. I mean, you could call Dishonored was like that. Basically a first-person shooter, but they tacked on a system from another thing.
I don't think there's a first-person shooter that doesn't have RPG elements in this day and age, though.
So yeah. I'm looking at the wiki for this, and I basically just searched video game genres, and it is amazing how many genres are actually listed on this wiki. Now, keep in mind that anybody can edit this and such. And speaking of just shooter, for example,
ball and paddle.
Yeah. So speaking of just shooter, for example, they define it mechanically by looks like 7 different types. You got first person, MMO, FPS. I guess that'd be like Firefall. Light gun shooter, like Duck Hunt. You have shoot 'em ups, which I guess that is sort of different than a regular shooter. You have tactical shooters, rail shooters, and third person shooters. So I guess third person being like can't really think of any off the top of my head,
third person
actually.
would be like
maybe
Gears
Mass
of
Effect
War.
3, maybe
Gears of War 2.
Kingdoms of Amalur.
Kingdoms of Amalur, third person. We'd call that an action RPG, wouldn't we? See how hard this is?
But you said we were talking about by purpose, though. They sort of separate it here. So any of these genres, the mechanical genres, shooter, adventure, role-playing, etc., is one thing, and then they separate it also by the purpose of the game, which is notable. So an adult video game, a adver game, I've never heard of that before. An art game, a casual game, Christian, educational, electronic, sports.
Adver game would be like the
pejorative.
I think it specifically says adver games in the context of video game genres refer to the promotional software specifically made to advertise a product, like Chex Quest in 1996. I'm thinking of all of those, like the Dora the Explorer games you can play in your browser for the kids, those kinds of things would fall under adver games.
Now, there's also a serious game. There's electronic sports, which includes most of what we have already talked about.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait, serious game doesn't include League of Legends. This is wrong. These are intended to... This is another word for educational game.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking as well, because there's games that would fall in that category that kind of train your reflexes and stuff, and that's I don't know. It's kind of vague, but I just thought it was interesting. I mean, the fact they have so many different types here. Party game under the casual category, party and music and stuff. But I think it's when it comes down to it, it's going to really be based on what the developer says it is, and that's the problem. When you see new games and trailers launch these days, we don't get a chance to put them in categories. The developer is very specific about throwing it in the second line of their trailer that this is a adjective type game.
Yeah.
You know?
Even the chat pointed out that Valve isn't even labeling Dota 2 as a Dota game. They're labeling it as an action RPG.
Yeah.
So there's that. Why don't just go all the way and say it's a third-person isometric action RPG? Or RTS, sorry, action RTS.
Dota,
action
this
RTS,
is Dota
my
saying?
bad. Valve is saying that Dota 2 is an action RTS.
Yes.
I got it wrong, sorry.
Real-time strategy. Well, see, we could play this game with every single title out there. I mean, because normally, again, when you think RTS, you're thinking controlling groups of units, you know, on varying ranges.
In comparison to League, you only ever really control one guy. There are a few characters that have a second, like Annie can control the bear, but in Dota 2, as I was reading through some materials, it looked like a lot of characters can have like their own little minion armies. So maybe it is slightly more
right, but
RTS.
that's an extension of your own character. You don't control, you know, the overall campaign strategy. You still are only yourself, and you can only affect the campaign through your own character. It's, you know, it'd be different if you could build towers or bunkers or redirect troops or, you know, any of that, but you don't do that. So I don't know, but that's what I'm getting at, though. I mean, Valve, that's how they presented their game, and it's a selling point. It's propaganda, and sadly, that's what these genres and subgenres have gone. Let's skip back 5-10 years, back when StarCraft 1 and Warcraft and such were all released. You didn't have all these subgenres, none of them. You had RTS, or this is a RPG. Even EverQuest was just considered an RPG. It was clear cut and simple, and then basically as advertising carried on and they figured out more ways to reach out, they started creating these subgenres. I mean, I don't think you're going to find anybody older that categorizes Dota 2 as whatever Valve just said it was. I mean, you're not going to see somebody play Company of Heroes 2 and say it's a historical whatever, you know, RTS. They're just going to say it's a strategy game.
Wait a minute, Kreno on the YouTube, he says Dota was never a type of game. I beg to differ, sir. Dota was the first game in its genre, and so everybody referred to everything that came after it as a Dota game.
Point of order. It was not. It was the first well-known.
Sorry. That's like saying, okay, Command and Conquer was the first RTS, but you're right, it was like Dune 2000. I'm sorry.
It's like saying that you want a Band-Aid or a Kleenex.
Yes. Exactly.
So, it's. I mean, the idea of MOBA game, all right, which is sort of like a what everybody, the community at large, has described Dota and similar games.
It's what Riot is pushing specifically, but the community has seemed to embrace it, I think.
Yeah, it's. I think at large, I mean, that's the genre. I mean, if you talk to, again, anybody that just sort of has a more general, you know, sense of what's going on, they will summarize these games, you know, like I said, strategy, RPG, etc. But MMO is sort of its own developed, you know, genre as well. They're going to say this is an MMO. They're going to say this is a MOBA game. They're going to say this is a strategy game, and that's clear cut and simple. At that point, that piques the interest of somebody that knows right away, I enjoy MMOs or I enjoy strategy, and then they will start to talk about subgenres. I think in the case of Dota, League, you know, all these different ones that are coming out now, it's a MOBA game. If somebody were to ask you to say in 3 words what it is, it's a MOBA. We'll just put it like that. I was going to say it is a MOBA, but it's a MOBA, and that makes it very simple and clear, because if you're a player that doesn't enjoy a MOBA, which they all have the same general principle, you control a hero in an isometric view, et cetera, then it's simple. I think going into all the subgenres again is an advertising thing. I don't think it's actually a something to base the game off of.
Yeah, and I think we're usually more able to describe a game better rather than using its genre. Usually, like what Brett said before, it's like Game X, but with a little hint of Game Y. Like, I mean, people have defined Firefall that way. They're like, oh, well, it's like Borderlands Online, And so that's I think gets people closest to the mark when you're trying to describe it to somebody who's never heard of it before.
I think the problem there, and this might be a little poignant, but the problem is people not reading, not taking the chance to read something beyond its cover. When we say this is a MOBA or this is a RTS and stuff, people develop that immediate generalization of, oh, I hate RTSs. I played StarCraft 1. I hated it. So all RTSs are bad. And so that's why these companies try to develop these subgenres to sound different, because unfortunately you have a lot of dense players out there. I mean, they will play World of Warcraft and love it and assume that all MMOs are like World of Warcraft, or should be, and that's exactly the problem. So when a new RPG or MMO comes out, they will define it as something different so that player tries to perceive it as something different from WoW.
So you have an interesting way of coming at it that I actually haven't considered much, because I've always thought of it as a tool. Because you can make a statement like, if you're trying to tell somebody about thing X, then you would say Y. But what I say is largely dependent on who I'm talking to. So I think what a person describes a genre as not only depends on the person themselves, but the intended audience. If you're a marketer, then you have a certain agenda and certain things you want to communicate. If you're a human being and you're talking to another human being, you want to say, is it a friend who enjoys this kind of game? Then yeah, I'll say, oh, it's a really good FPS. That's all you need to know. If it's a friend of mine who doesn't like FPSs, I'll say, well, it's an FPS, but it's different because it has these elements. It's...
That's true. You do kind of change how you describe it, don't you?
It's a tool. It's a tool for conveying what something is like. Or
if you're a reticist, it's a weapon.
Yeah. Well, the quality of the tool depends on the quality of the ability of, or sorry, not the quality of, the ability of the person using it to effectively get their point across to the audience.
That's true. All right. Well, any other final thoughts to sum up our topic here? I mean, it's like we said, it's very inward and outward, but I think we covered it enough. It's not a huge topic, so we didn't talk about it for forever this week. But any final thoughts?
I just think that when anybody's looking at subgenres, I mean, just understand that it's all marketing. Every bit of it. It's conniving. It really is.
It's not marketing when I'm talking to a friend of mine, though.
Well,
no, it's not. But you're not going to use a 5-word subgenre description either, are you?
Exactly.
You're going to describe the game, and you're going to provide links and research, and we'll just summarize it as you're going to provide intelligence.
It's about the quality of discourse that the person describing things with genres brings to it.
But I would disagree. I'd say it is marketing, because you're often trying to persuade them to play it with you, and so you have an ulterior motive, which is get them to play it whether they're going to like it or not. I needed a co-pilot here.
What about first?
Or I get a bonus if you sign up.
I'm insulted that you would imply ulterior motives in me, Bridger. I mean, what about think of old games that were on a console, say, before multiplayer was a big thing. Say you're recommending an RPG. You're recommending it to your friend because you care about your friend and you want them to have that experience that you had.
That just occurred to me. Now we have yet another type of genre, which is the put-down genre, right? When somebody asks, what about Game X? And you say, oh, don't worry about that. It's a console game. As if that's all you need to know. It's a console port, right? Console port is almost its own categorization of games, where you're telling the person you're speaking to, listen, this is a game made for consoles. The PC version sucks. Don't buy it. It's got its own set of the FOV is bad. The controls are terrible. The menus don't use for mouse and PC. I mean, it's got its own thing. They all have that stuff in common. Wow, okay, we are discovering new layers to this that I did not expect to get to.
I mean, judging just looking at the chat and the way that people are choosing to describe different things, I think, again, it depends on who you're talking to and what you want them to know and come away with, and how you best think that you can get them on your side or to enjoy something.
I gotta say though, reading chat, I have never seen anybody dislike, like we're talking about introducing a genre or describing a game. I've never seen anybody dislike a tower defense game. So there you go.
Desktop tower defense. I spent so many hours on that game.
You can't go wrong with a tower defense game ever. It's there you go. So, and that's its own genre. You can use that and get away with it.
There you go. That's the quote of the evening. You can never go wrong with a tower defense game.
Nope.
Go out there and make more of them.
Or a Halo.
Or a Halo.
I remember there was like there was a baiting image on the internet forever ago, and it was some quote that people were copying and pasting everywhere, like, so before Halo invented the first person shooter, like, what did people do?
Wow,
oh, that is good.
Troll much.
That is good trolling.
It was a phrase engineered from birth to be as trolly as humanly possible.
That's almost as good as the phrase that often comes up on Reddit, which is "Use the Force, Harry," as was mentioned by Gandalf.
Oh yes, the
nerd rage quote.
The super wrong quotes.
Yes. What can you do in the fewest words to piss off the most nerds? All right, we have wandered well afar from our main topic, so I will go ahead and call it right there. Thanks, guys, for watching / listening. Again, this is a podcast available if you want to listen to it on the go. You can find the link at the bottom of the YouTube video there. It's available on the Sound Strategy Network website, Sound Strategy Network YouTube channel. If you search for that, I am Bridger. And with me was Brett and Freelancer tonight. Thanks, guys. And
Thank you.
I will leave you with my favorite definition of a game ever, which turns off more people to the game than I can possibly imagine, even though I'm trying to convince them to play it. And that is Puzzle Strike. A card game played with chips instead of cards, trying to describe a puzzle game which itself is trying to describe a fighting game. That usually doesn't work to get people to try it out. But it's so clever. I know it shouldn't it? No?
Well, I think what's missing is the context that puzzle game, the fighting game was really good, and the puzzle game was really good.
And so then they made a card game and decided not to use cards.
Yes.
All right. With that, signing out. Don't forget to check out teamlegacy.net. And subscribe to the Twitch channel if you want to watch. Wednesdays and Sundays at 7 p.m. is our live recording times. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
I muted the wrong side. Okay. There we go. It was a good show.
Yeah.
Whew. And it didn't last forever. Yay.
Super Puzzle Fighter Turbo was my jam.
Oh man, that's such a fun game. It's a ridiculously fun game. But then when I tried to play it online, I found out that people were way faster than me. Like, incredibly fast. Like, the thing appears at the top of the screen, and they take literally less than a second to move it to the right place and insta-drop it.
That's the thing, though, is you have to play those games for a really long time and eventually become second nature, that you just see these colors up here in the top right out of the corner of your eye, and you instinctively know, like, all right, I'm working on a green gem over here, and I don't want to break this yet, so slam that down to the corner and just... it's so good, though.
For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, you were missing out.
And,
Let me
yeah,
turn off
there was
this
that
music here.
that great episode of Extra Credits where they were talking about why puzzle or why RPGs worked great when they combined it with a puzzle game. I think they were talking about.
Oh,
something.
Is it Puzzle Quest?
Yeah, they were talking about Puzzle Quest and why that worked out so well. And I think there's a similar argument to be made for fighting games and why it works in a puzzler, and saving up resources and striking a little bit when you need to strike a little bit, doing like little picks at people's health, and then when you see that the moment is right, going for like a super move and breaking one of your big gems. And I think there are parallels to be made that are why the transition worked so well. And then the characters were different because every character had their own drop pattern.
Yep.
So in this game, when you hit people, you drop these unusable or like uncomboable gems onto the other person's pile, which become something in a certain number of turns. So in like 5 turns, this will be something you can actually use, which is kind of like building up your super meter in a fighting game.
Yeah.
Somebody hits you, and you can't use this now, but in a few turns, you can turn it into a super move.
Yeah. Oh man, this is making me want to go play this again.
I have it on the. I got the HD remix that's out for the PlayStation 3.
I have the one that's out for the. Actually, David Serlin worked on those, by the way. Did you know that?
Yes,
he
I
helped
did.
design them, balance them.
Yep.
All right, I gotta
there
get back
goes Victory.
to Warhammer. I will be seeing you guys later.
All right.
Okay,
I'll see you later.
See you.
You got to do
And,
some Dota 2 with us sometime, Bridger.
Yeah, I was playing through the tutorial a little bit while you guys were working on the other thing because I didn't want to jump in with zero knowledge at all. But maybe I'll catch you next time.
You played League. You don't have zero knowledge.
Well, yeah, but it works. I didn't. Okay, not zero. I know how. There are a lot of differences.
Yeah, I will say
that's
that,
right. I remember Bridger saying something like, "How do you deny?" or something like that.
Well, I just was. I wanted to remember if that did have denying or not because I knew Heroes of New Earth did, but I couldn't remember if Dota 2 did or not.
Well, Heroes of New Earth only did because Dota did.
Right, and Dota 2 only does because Dota did. I still think it's a bad mechanic though because it's so counterintuitive, but it's not bad for any other reason. It's just bad because it's counterintuitive, which means once you get over that hurdle, it's fine. So playing the game having that knowledge is great, but teaching a new player, okay, sometimes what you want to do is attack your own team, makes them do what?
So, Tibrit, you ought to consider joining us temporarily for Warhammer. What we're doing is getting... All right, so Warhammer servers of Warhammer Online is pretty much dead, but those that are still playing, it's very heavily based towards destruction side, which is the opposing side from Order in this MMO. You can play for free in what they call Tier 1, which is like level 1 to 10. And in that tier, the opposing side has limitless numbers, it appears. So we are intentionally going in with our community members and banding together in PvP and we just plan on massacring mass amounts of these players that are, for all intents and purposes, ruining the game for the Order side. So just throwing it out there in case you were interested in it. I don't know if you ever played Warhammer at all or not.
Like once. Yeah, are you talking about the tabletop game?
No, Warhammer Online.
No. Warhammer Online, MMO.
Well, I've played the tabletop once or twice. Never went in for the MMO.
All right, well, just throwing it out there for you.
Mostly because it was Warhammer Fantasy, which is a universe that I never particularly cared for. I was always...
Well, let me be frank. We could care less about the story or anything. We're just doing it to have PvP, and kill people and enjoy the moment. That's what it's about.
If we can swear a blood feud against all elves, then possibly.
Well, see, there's a problem there because we're the Order side and we have.
You can swear a blood feud against all the Dark Elves.
Yeah, we have the High Elves. And see, I'm sort of a High Elf, so I take offense to that.
It's just that, like, the Warhammer... I'm saying so many inflammatory things today, but the Warhammer fantasy elves are, like, the most generically elfy fantasy elves, and it makes me so mad.
They are. But keep in mind that when you say generically, Warhammer lore has been around since before it was generic.
I think what
so-
he's saying is it's Tolkien-esque, which is the oldest
Well,
elves.
not necessarily Tolkien-esque, but like back from the days when elf was a class instead of a race.
I see. I still
Wow.
can't log in free. I don't know
Well,
what's
no, it's
going
like
on.
I was playing, yeah, Golden Axe the other day, and it's like, do you want to be the fighter, the dwarf, or the elf?
All
or
right,
the
you all
archer.
have a good one, and I'll see you on Dota and Warhammer.
I can't play Warhammer. It won't let me log in.
Well, it's because you're sort of a casual.
And
you know,
it knows that.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
hey,
it kind of knows that. And, yeah, sorry.
I'm
Bridger.
trying to play Warhammer Online, but I've went and I can log into the Warhammer Online website. I can log into my Mythic account, but when I try to log into the launcher, it always tells me authentication failed, no matter what I try.
I would just send an email. They respond within 24 hours.
Yeah, it's
I
probably
got
just a weird thing.
I got a response in 4 hours when I asked about my account. So
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I remember something about capitalization of the username being important. Maybe that's it.
well, both username and the password.
Well, yeah, the passwords always have usually have capitalization being an issue, but let me see if
Oh,
I
man,
do
did,
this.
I know Adam hasn't because he didn't get into it, but
Nope.
did you ever watch Daria Freelancer?
The TV show? Yeah.
Yeah. There's an episode where the father gets into like a .com company as a consultant, and one of the guys goes, "Oh, Jake, you're funnier than a case-sensitive search engine."
That's pretty good.
And I was like, computer jokes from the late 90s. Or no, early 2000s.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, well...
And everybody's still watching our after shows like,
All right.
I see.
No, we got a few people laughing.
I see a couple of walls.
All right, y'all have a good night.
All right, see ya.
Yeah, you do.
I'll have to figure out how to contact support. I see character transfer, billing, contact information, link accounts, subscriptions. I don't see any way to contact anyone. Oh, wait, there's a button at the bottom that lets support. Okay, I'll try to do that, and we'll see if I can maybe play it or not. I'll be back maybe streaming some other stuff in a little bit here. But thanks for coming on, Rob.
Yep.
All right, I'll play with you guys something, somewhere. Have a good night, everybody.